No doubt every Australian Prime Minister feels like they're leading the country in challenging times. History, of course, proves that some eras are more difficult than others. If you think Julia Gillard's in the lodge at a tough time, spare a thought for Joseph Lyons, who had to steer the nation through the Depression years of the 30s. He's a man who gets scant attention in political studies, but a new book is trying to change that. National Affairs correspondent Heather Hewitt reports.
Good evening, listeners. The wheel of time has turned another cycle. 1934 has been a year of trial. To many, it has brought suffering.
He led Australia through the Depression years and made history in many ways, the only Tasmanian and Catholic on the Conservative side to gain the top job, soon after deserting Labor ranks. Yet, several decades on, he's almost the forgotten Prime Minister.
This is a man who was an important Prime Minister. He, after all, was the first Prime Minister to win 3 successive election victories and stay Prime Minister. He should be remembered, and I think that he was forgotten because he belonged to neither Labor or Liberal in the historical code.
He was never considered in the Labor Party because he was a rat, and rats in the Labor Party are not accepted.
Anyone who betrays the Labor Party, particularly a Member of Parliament, to join the other side is going to wear that sobriquet for the rest of their days.
Joseph Lyons quit the Labor Party and his role in the Scullin government in 1931, amidst bitter internal power struggles. He and other Labor dissidents joined forces with the Conservative opposition. Then known as the United Australia Party, it was a precursor to the Liberal Party, and Lyons was installed as leader, romping into government later that year.
I am taking this opportunity of introducing the members of the new ministry.
It's in the midst of the Great Depression. The country is asunder. Across Western democracies, there is serious doubt as to whether democracy can meet the economic crisis.
Over the period of the 30s, Lyons kept government going. He kept a stable government. He took Australia out of the Depression earlier than most other countries.
Yet the history books, by and large, have not treated him kindly or in any great detail until the launch today of this book, written by historian Anne Henderson.
He was the People's Prime Minister. You know, he was seen as someone who hadn't been brought in by a party. So, yeah, it was just a big thing.
He's certainly a Labor rat, but he was true to his beliefs. And one of the most fascinating differences between then and now was the power of ideas, how they motivated people.
By 1937, when Lyons began his 3rd term in office, the country had almost recovered from the Depression and he was still popular.
He also had a wife who was a very strong figure and very good at bringing people's votes in or appealing to them on the stage. He never felt threatened by a strong woman's presence.
Well, he put Mum on a pedestal, from what I can make out, and no, that was one of his great strengths, I think.
Enid Lyons married the much more senior Joseph when she was just 17, and they had 12 children. They were devoted to each other and were a political power couple. Much later, Enid would become a prominent federal politician herself.
Mum and Dad were unique. There's no 2 ways about it.
During Joseph Lyons' reign, the family home was here in Devonport. It was known as Home Hill and is now a museum run by the National Trust.
It brings back memories every time I come.
The house is full of political relics, including the Bible Joseph Lyons was sworn in on.
This is probably the most significant article in the house.
The long distance from Tasmania to Canberra in those days means Peter Lyons, the second youngest in the family, didn't see much of his father.
Dad had to take a train from Canberra to Yass, I think, and then another one to Melbourne, and then get on the boat.
So this was the office?
Yeah,
Until 1936, there wasn't even a telephone connection. But once again, he blazed a trail, the first to use one linked to the mainland.
But it was the first call he made as Prime Minister on that phone over there.
He also became the nation's first flying Prime Minister and always made sure the media knew where he was to record the event.
He overcame his fear of flying, and he was a Prime Minister who would readily use the aeroplane to see as many places as he could during an election campaign.
Overseas trips, though, were by boat, with one lasting up to 6 months, and including a chance meeting with Hollywood star of the day, Shirley Temple.
And there is a wonderful photograph of him walking on deck with her. Nice, because he had so many little kids of his own. Joe Lyons was also the first Prime Minister, with the help of his wife and his family, to spin the whole character of a family Prime Minister. They never had a heap of money. He died with £340 or something in the bank.
Joseph Lyons died in office on Good Friday, 1939. He'd suffered ill health, there were tensions in his government, and war loomed.
Oh, it was a huge reaction. All the photographs are of streets packed with people. Sydney was, it was like Anzac Day procession. Look, no Prime Minister had ever died in office.
And back at Home Hill in Devonport, a little 7-year-old boy knew his mother was devastated.
She had to come home early from the funeral, and I was sitting at her feet, but she was lying on the bed, and I remember asking her, this is a 7-year-old asking, was she going to get married again, which is not quite a thing you should ask.
She never did remarry. Enid and Joseph Lyons lie buried next to each other at Devonport's public cemetery, not far from Home Hill and their surviving family members.
Heather Hewitt reporting.